Good afternoon. We will be getting started in a moment. Sorry for the brief delay. I'm going to give everyone a chance to get settled in and we'll get started. Okay, welcome to United Policyholders webinar on deadlines and decisions around the one-year anniversary of your wildfire losses. My name is Amy Bach, and I will be joined by a special guest this afternoon. Before we get started, we have an interpreter, Javier, who's going to explain to you, both those of you who will be listening in English and those of you who will be listening in Spanish, how to use the toolbar, your Zoom toolbar, to choose your language. So thank you, Javier.
Yes, I'm going to say it first in English very quickly. So welcome everyone, and we are a team of interpreters, we're two, and you are going to see a globe at the bottom of the screen. You click on the globe and you're going to have the option to select either English or Spanish. It is our recommendation that you select English if you speak English and Spanish if you speak Spanish, in order to enjoy the dialogue, if there is a dialogue, questions and answers. And the only thing you had to do is just listen. The interpreters will switch channels, and that's all you had to worry about. I'm going to say the same in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos. Hay interpretación en español. Tenemos un equipo de 2 intérpretes. Van a ver un globo terráqueo al calce de la pantalla. Por favor, presionen en el globo terráqueo y elijan español si prefieren escuchar la presentación en español. Y si tienen preguntas, pueden hacerlas en español y nosotros las interpretaríamos al inglés. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Amy. All yours.
Thank you so much, Javier. Okay, so hopefully you all have clicked on that little, it's the farthest right. It says interpretation on the on your toolbar there. And if you want it in English, you're going to click English. Spanish. So again, I want to thank you for your time and your attention this afternoon. And we are going to start our PowerPoint now. Hang on, let me get this to the bottom. This is my week of Zoom challenges. Okay. Come on now. There we go. Okay. All right. So today we will be talking about some of the decisions that you may be grappling with at this time in your recovery journey. Hopefully you are keeping a recovery journal. As we say at the beginning of each of our webinars, of course, we are sorry for your losses. And one of the reasons our organization offers these programs is because we have many years of experience in the unique challenges that people face when they've been impacted by a wildfire. Our organization has been in areas that have been hit by wildfires, providing services and help since 1991. So this is our 30th year. And when it comes to insurance, there are very few things new under the sun. The process is typically confusing. It can be frustrating. It goes better for some people than it does for others. And our goal is to give you nuggets of wisdom and guidance that have helped other people in similar situations overcome obstacles related to collecting every dime of your insurance benefits, which of course, for everybody, at whatever your income level is, if you have had your property damaged or destroyed in a wildfire, you need money to make repairs. And so because your insurance policy should be the source of that money, the primary source. We focus on helping you understand how the process should go, and then identify sources of help when it doesn't go the way that it should. A little quickie about our organization. We're a nonprofit like the Red Cross or the Sierra Club. We're not selling anything. You cannot hire us to be your lawyers or your claim adjusters. We are here to be a source of information for you, and also to be an advocate for you. If we see patterns of problems with the way your claims are being handled, we have a very good relationship with the agencies in Washington and Oregon that are charged with helping keeping an eye on the insurance industry, and then helping people like you who have bought insurance and are insurance consumers. The word that we use is policyholders. You hold a policy, you are a policyholder, and you have rights. Particularly in both of your states, you have some very good, important rights that are embedded in the law, and both your insurance commissioners in Oregon and in Washington have shown a commitment to standing up for you and helping you when they can. There's also other sources of help, and one of them is our attorneys, and we've got an attorney with us today to help out. Now, if you have questions, I encourage you to type them into the Q&A, and then our staff attorney, Elise Hicks, will read them out loud for me because I cannot see them. And then we will do our best to answer those questions. So we are funded by donations and grants. And then we have a volunteer corps that helps us get our work done. And that includes people who have had a fire themselves, been there, done that, and have some road wisdom to share. And you can meet with some of those people at our Survivor to Survivor forums. I'll have a slide towards the end with the dates of those upcoming forums. And then we also have professional volunteers. And our guest this afternoon, Kyle Sturm, is one of those professional volunteers whose job it is to advise and represent people who are having problems with their insurance, and to be an effective advocate for them in holding an insurance company accountable for giving fair treatment and getting you a remedy if you're not getting that treatment. So that is largely how we get our work done. We also have a small paid staff, and our government partners like the Washington Office of the Insurance Commissioner and the Oregon Division of Business Services are our partners. And as I said, we have lots of folks in our family on Team Up that have different kinds of skills that are relevant in your situation. Construction estimating, law, etc. So tonight's program is through our Roadmap to Recovery. If you got a copy of this book along the way, that's our book, and hopefully it's been helpful to you. I want to thank Representative Pam Marsh, who for some of you, she may be your state assembly representative, and she has been a terrific partner for us in Oregon. And some of you may know she helped carry a bill that's now law, not technically, it doesn't technically apply to your claims because it took effect this past January, but it has some really good stuff in it. And her office, Representative Marsh, and her website has really good information, particularly if you have a manufactured home, a mobile home, manufactured home. So just a quick fine print. We are just here to give you general guidance, even though Kyle's a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. We are really here just to give you information. We cannot be your lawyer in this context. So whatever, if you have a specific legal question, we recommend you consult with an experienced attorney. And we do have on our website a directory of law firms that specialize in representing policyholders, people in your situation. Kyle's firm is one of them. And that is a good place to start if you do need to find professional help. So we're not endorsing or warranting Kyle's services other than to say that that he specializes in this area. But before you hire any professional, whether it be a good, nice guy like Kyle or anybody else who comes to you, even if you got their name through our website, you still need to do your own diligence in checking references and making sure that they're the right fit for you before you commit to, particularly if you are agreeing to pay them a percentage of your insurance benefits, which is typically the way people will hire professional help on an insurance claim, not by the hour, but on a commission, basically a contingent fee based on what your coverage is. Just a reminder that on our website, we have a library that's curated especially for residents of Washington. That's there for you free 24/7. We have one for Oregon. We do our best to keep those libraries up to date as things develop, and those are good resources. So that's me. I have been a professional insurance consumer advocate since 1984. I'm one of the authors of that yellow book. I co-founded this organization, and I'm a consumer advocate. That is my passion, to make sure that you get what you paid for from your insurance. And so I want to welcome Kyle Sturm. Kyle is a partner in the law firm of Foreman, Sturm, and Thiede. Am I pronouncing it right, Carl? Thiede or Thiede?
It's Thiede, yeah.
Thiede.
Yep.
And you have offices in Portland, Seattle, and Bend, also Texas, but I think that's probably not relevant here. Kyle, how long have you been focusing on insurance recovery?
Well, so I actually started my career representing insurance companies and had enough of that, and have been representing policyholders full-time since roughly like 2013.
Okay. And so you are familiar with both Oregon and Washington law, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Okay, I'm not deposing you. It sounds like I am. So Kyle's been actively involved since last year's wildfires. He's been doing quite a bit of volunteer work and professional work, counseling and assisting wildfire impacted households. And he has been a great volunteer for us and is one of our sponsors. Also, because of all the years that we have been doing this work, United Policyholders recognizes and has seen how disaster anniversaries tend to bring up emotions and renewed anxiety, especially when there's smoke in the air. So we are really, our hearts are with you at this time. It's just very common that people around the 1 year have some renewed trauma. So that's normal. And if you are in need of counseling services, again, Representative Marsh's office or her website in Oregon is a great place to find some leads. But if you're in Washington, similar, there are some free counseling services available through FEMA. And if you're having trouble finding those free mental health counseling resources, you can shoot an email to info@uphelp.org, and we will do our best to get you leads. So at this time, it's really one of the most important things is to, if you've been keeping a journal or diary, as we recommend, writing down what's been happening and what your insurer has paid and what's still open, what you might still be owed. This is a good time to take stock of the status of your insurance claim and figure out how much more dollars there may be available to you under that policy that have not been paid to you or offered to you. So we recommend requesting a complete claim summary from the adjuster that you're working with. Now, we know that adjusters rotate, and some of you at this point may be on, your fourth, fifth, sixth or more adjuster, and that makes it often hard to keep track of where you are. So we recommend at this time that you write an email or a letter if you're not an email person, requesting a complete summary of all amounts that your insurer has paid to date. And that way you can correct any errors that you may find. And it will help you stay focused on your goal and how to get to the finish line, as far as being able to know that you got a fair shake from your insurance policy, you got whatever you get out of it, and that if there is a specific amount still that you are needing to collect, this will help you stay focused on exactly what that amount is that you still are looking to collect. Then for most of you, you will, if your insurance company is reimbursing you for your temporary rent benefits, which are also sometimes called ALE, additional living expense, or loss of use. Their insurance companies use different labels for those different categories, but it's all the same. It is the expenses that you're incurring because you've lost the use of your home. Typically, your insurer is going to be paying, they may have given you an advance, and then after that, they're requiring you to submit proof as you go and then reimbursing you. So we hope that you have found a way to, whether it's a big envelope or you have a drawer where you're putting receipts, and if you haven't been doing that, no time like the present to start. We know that it's easy to tell wildfire impacted households to be organized, but it's very hard for a lot of households to be organized when life goes on and people have to, put food on the table, get kids to school, all that stuff. But now is a good time to try to organize your receipts and make sure that you are not leaving insurance money on the table by not submitting receipts. And staying in communication with your insurance company. Oh, I can see. That's wonderful. I can see the questions. That's going to make our lives easier, Elise, as we go. So we will get to that question as soon as possible. Okay. So communicating with your insurer, in writing is a great way to keep things on track. And that's why we recommend people be a little more, maybe, I don't like to say anal retentive. I like to say a little bit more organized and paperwork oriented than most people would be, by really confirming conversations with the insurance companies that you have over the phone, in writing, through email. And if you're using their claim portal, that's where that should make it easy for you to be communicating. And if you're not using some sort of online claim portal, and you're using email, obviously you have that record in your inbox. Okay. So we talked about journaling, keeping organized. Kyle, I don't want to waste, the fact that you're here with us. When somebody comes to see you, to ask you to evaluate their situation, what do you typically find in the way of their paperwork? You can kind of just give us sort of a general.
Yeah, very rarely is it everything that we want, right? And we found, honestly, what I found is to be a generational thing. I found that older folks tend to do a really good job of keeping a journal, of logging receipts, of tracking their documents and things like that. And some of the folks like, my vintage and younger, not really the best at it. So we do encourage people, like you said, we call it the trust but verify. If you have a conversation with your insurance company, you do the unnatural thing, which is you write to them, you say, hey, I'm confirming our conversation, blah, blah, blah. If that's incorrect or you understand it differently, please let me know. And we use those as good benchmarks because, if you do get to litigation and, I don't know, how many people know this, but an insurance company is both via regulation and as a matter of practice, they keep a claim journal, and that claim journal is locked. Every single thing that happens on that claim is logged in there. So all of your conversations are recorded into this claim log. If you don't have something else, whether it's your journal like you're talking about or a confirmation email, it's going to be a he said, she said
Right.
situation about what went on. So, over document, over confirm, get everything in writing as best you can.
Yeah, we got to find a better way to put it. I like the way you put it. But saying be anal retentive is not really, doesn't communicate. It's like, it's not normal really for anyone, to confirm. You have a conversation with somebody, you think, well, we talked about that. The adjuster said that as long as I, gave them, one receipt, I wouldn't have to give them every one if it's the same expense I'm incurring. Normally you would think, well, okay, that's what the person said, so I'm going to rely on that. What we're here to say is, you got to write back and say, this will confirm that on such and such a date, you told me that it would be okay that I didn't have to keep submitting receipts over and over for the same item, the same amount. That's very helpful, and I appreciate that. And that's it. It's not natural. That's kind of how I think that's the word Kyle used to be that kind of business-like, but that's what we encourage you to do. And it's never too late to do it. And if you are substantially underinsured, which we know many of you are, we have a lot of very specific guidance on our website, but we do encourage you to consult with an experienced policyholder attorney. And the interesting thing, Kyle, you guys work on contingency as well as hourly?
We do, yeah. Yep. Okay. Particularly for the wildfire victims, yeah.
Right. So normally, if you were to go to a lawyer for, putting together a will or something like that, you're going to pay them by the hour. But in connection with something like an insurance dispute, if you feel like your insurance company has not been treating you fairly, has not paid you what they owe you, and you want to talk to a lawyer because that is one of the main sources of your leverage to get a fair outcome, typically you're going to hire them on a contingent fee basis, meaning you're not going to pay them by the hour because it's not affordable. The costs will add up too quickly. So they will take, if they think that you have a good case, they will take it on a contingent fee basis, which means that you don't pay them for their time, but you agree to give them a percentage of what they recover for you from the insurance company. Very much like if you got approached by a public adjuster early on, that's how they work too. They don't ask you to pay their hourly, they just take a piece of your benefits. And the thing is, it's a little, with in this situation, a lot of you at this point will have gotten a lot of the money that was available in your policy, and there's probably just some amount left over, and or you're underinsured and you're trying to figure out if you have a remedy. It doesn't generally cost you anything to get a review from a lawyer like Kyle or one of the other lawyers in our Find Help directory, because almost all of them work on contingency fee, which means that if they don't think you have a good case, they're going to tell you that. They're not going to take your case if they don't think it's good, because they're not going to get paid. So the good thing about the contingent fee system is that your financial interests and your lawyer's financial interests are aligned, right? And so you really have nothing to lose if you are significantly underinsured or you feel like you're getting treated badly. You really don't have anything to lose going and getting a lawyer, a good policyholder lawyer, to take a look at it. Because like I said, they're not going to take that case if they don't think that you have a pretty good shot of winning. So it's a good way to get an opinion about your situation. So common policy deadlines, they vary by your insurance company and the policy form. Some of them get overridden by operation of law. Kyle's going to talk a little bit about that. The lawsuit limitation that will be in your policy, it's usually in a section called Suit Against Us. And typically it says you have 12 months, but that's an example of a deadline that can be overridden by operation of law. Kyle, can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. So, some states, including Oregon, have fire statutes, like it's called the fire code. And what that does is it provides the floor of protection that the state and its legislature have said that the insurance companies need to abide by. And in Oregon, we see a lot of times, in fact, I just talked to somebody today who had this issue. They had a farmer's policy and it had a 1-year suit against us limitation period. Well, Oregon has said, it's not 1 year, it's actually 2 years from the date of the fire that a policyholder has to file a lawsuit against their insurance company. So, notwithstanding what the contract says, the statutes in Oregon say something different, and in Washington as well, that broaden some of the protections that are available or that you would otherwise think you have available to you under your insurance policy. So it is super important to talk to somebody or go to the UP resources or something that would help to find what those statutes are to see if you have a little bit broader protections.
Yeah, and thank you. And I will explain in a minute why I have a lawyer on here with me and why we're talking about lawsuits. But just know that it has to do with your leverage, meaning, you're the little guy, the insurance company is the big guy, and your leverage, your power, a lot of it comes from your ability to use the civil justice system to hold your insurance company accountable if they are not behaving properly. So our organization is a consumer group. We feel very strongly that you have already paid for both coverage and good claim service when you bought your insurance. You shouldn't have to pay somebody to get what you already paid for. But the reality in this world and insurance being high stakes, there being a lot of claims now being filed for wildfires more than there were in the past. In some insurance companies, are trying to take shortcuts, and they're always, they are for-profit companies. So they're always going to advertise, that they're your friend, but they're not, they're a business. But they are, just like any business, they're obligated to follow the law and deliver on the promises that they made to you. And, for better or for worse, your ultimate leverage is a lawsuit. So we want to make sure you understand your options here. That's why we're offering tonight's program, because you may look at your policy and say, oh, wow, I only have 12 months to sue them. And many of the adjusters, a lot of times insurance companies on these wildfire claims, they bring in adjusters who are not that experienced, and they may say to you, oh, well, you're out of luck now, you can't sue us. And, whereas in a perfect world, it wouldn't matter that you couldn't sue them. They still have an obligation to treat you fairly. But the reality is that once that deadline passes, you do lose a lot of leverage, and they know that. And typically it gets a lot harder if you have missed a statute of limitations, but you're not in any danger of doing that now. So do not worry about that right now. A year from now, we'll come back and we'll be talking about it. But there are deadlines in your policy that we want to make sure that you're aware of if your adjuster hasn't been calling them to your attention. So for temporary rent, loss of use benefits, there may be a deadline. There is almost in most policies, except for there's one insurer that has just a dollar limit, not a time limit, but most policies will have a time limit. And we're going to explain to you what that typically is in a minute. There also may be deadlines in your policy for collecting full replacement value. And you probably have gotten paid something, hopefully a lot, or at least a good chunk. But you may be confused as to why you didn't get the full policy benefits, why you only got a part of it. And typically it's because of something called depreciation that insurance companies have written into their policies. It says, we're only going to pay you the Craigslist or the used VAT price of items until you replace them, if you have replacement coverage. And so typically you will have gotten some payouts, but you are entitled to more money. So, but there are deadlines for how long you have to submit proof that you've replaced things to collect the full value. Every one of these deadlines can be extended by your insurer voluntarily, including the lawsuit deadline. But very often they choose not to do that. And you'll see in a minute that in the state of Oregon, the right away, your insurance office and the governor as soon as the fires hit last year, they issued an emergency order telling insurance companies to be flexible with deadlines. And that's sort of it's in asking them to, it's not a law. So sometimes insurance companies comply, sometimes they don't. And we're here to say that if your insurer isn't cooperating, we have suggestions for what we recommend that you do. But clarifying those deadlines with your company and adjuster is very important. So I'm just curious, Kyle, I was looking at this order today and I noticed that it's technically expired in November, but and I know that it was supposed to apply to the immediate aftermath. It is an order and it does call on insurers to extend all deadlines to report claims and submit other communications. Has this come up? Have you had an insurer say, well, we don't have to comply with that anymore, it's not in effect?
Well, rarely do we have an insurance company agree with most of what we're saying, but I think that the insurance companies have been pretty good about not wanting to be called out as that company that is the one thumbing their eye in these wildfire victims. So
right.
What we found most of the time is because of that bad press, and people in the Northwest are ready to jump all over bad insurance companies. They're pretty nervous about that more than ever. So ask and you shall receive is kind of the motto that we have going for us right now. And we ask and ask and ask and say, look, we either ask or we sue. You pick which one you want.
Right.
And most of the time they're saying, yeah, we'll toll the limitations, we'll give you some extra time, et cetera, et cetera.
Can you explain the word toll that you just mentioned?
Sure. Yeah. So there are, the suit limitation period is one example, but there are perhaps some other ones as well that it basically is, you as a policyholder have to do something, for instance, sue us by a certain point. And when we say we want to toll that, what we're really saying is suspend it.
Right.
And not hold us subject to that either for an indefinite amount of time, which is usually our preference, or B, a specific amount of months or weeks, which is the insurance company's perspective or preference. So we are usually asking for extensions if we have to in like 6-month increments that allow paperwork and all of the kind of back and forth to get done to allow you to try to resolve a claim amicably and without a lawsuit.
Yeah. Okay. So deadlines that may matter at the wildfire anniversary would be the main one that I want you all to keep an eye on would be the proof of loss deadline. And again, the Oregon department did put out another bulletin, which I'm going to show you in a minute, saying insurance companies should be flexible with what kind of proof they require. A phone call notifying them should be enough. But again, it's the best practice is to, in writing, confirm with your adjuster that your proof of loss is complete and has been submitted. And what often happens is, you don't know that what the total value of your loss is usually for quite some time. Some people are still, so I just met somebody last week who just starting his inventory for his loss, because, as is very understandable, it's very traumatic to have to go through that process, and people have a really hard time putting pen to paper. And but again, the main thing is that your insurer is not going to come back and say, well, you didn't submit a proof of loss, because a proof of loss for a fire claim doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be any particular, the insurer form, or as long as you have notified the insurer that you've had a loss, and you've been reasonably diligent in giving them the details, then you should be fine. The other deadline, but it's always a good idea to confirm that in writing with the insurer, because there is, in your policy, typically there's going to be a deadline for submitting a proof of loss. It can be 60 days. It can be 1 year, but whatever it is, you should be confirming in writing that that your claim is open, that your proof is good, and that if the insurer needs to have some sort of formal extension, then you need that. The other issue for a lot of folks is you may have been paid a percentage of your contents benefits without having to submit an itemized inventory, but you want to get your full 100%, and most insurers are going to make you itemize from the first item to do that. And so again, that's something you want to get cleared up with them in writing. The other deadline that may matter could be filing a lawsuit. Now, Kyle, we talked about the fact that people have at least 2 years to file a lawsuit against an insurance company for unreasonable conduct, right, or breach of contract. What about a broker or agent? All these people who are underinsured, do they need, and if they want to file a lawsuit against the agent or broker who failed to get them the adequate coverage? And we'll talk about the fact that is no walk in the park. But if they want to pursue that remedy, do they have to worry about the 1 year anniversary?
I don't think you necessarily need to worry about the 1 year anniversary for purposes of a negligence claim against a broker. If you're looking at like Unfair Trade Practice Act claims or like fraud type claims, those tend to have a shorter limitation period of 1 year. But for most of the complaints, particularly that a policyholder would have against an insurance broker, and the ones that we're seeing overwhelmingly, which you've already hit on, are underinsured, you have 2 years. Okay.
Okay. So we talked about the proof of loss. And here's a bulletin that I was referring to earlier that the Oregon Department put out. And this is where they said insurers should allow and accept any inventory form that contains similar information to what would be reported using their specific form. They also, this bulletin tells insurers that they should agree to accept an inventory that I would say reduced specificity, reduced itemization, so that you could group categories instead of listing, every bottle of every spice little jar, 1 jar of oregano, 1 jar of whatever, that you could say 20 jars of spices, or same thing with books, shoes, food items, that sort of thing. But notice that the word should, it doesn't say must. So there's a little bit of play in there, but it does set what we lawyers call the standard of care, meaning the way that the insurer should behave, right? So the department has said you should behave that way. So that can help you. That gives you leverage, that really important concept, leverage to get a fair payout, fair settlement. So this was another bulletin that the division put out. Again, encourages, you can see it's encourages, it doesn't say you must. So Kyle, how does this work for you? Like the should and the encourages versus the must. Does this still helpful to people, even though it's not a legal mandate?
Yes, it's always helpful. And I will say there's also a difference depending on which side of the Columbia River you're on. If you're up in Washington, those should comments have a lot more teeth than they do down here in Oregon. In Washington, and it's kind of sad, but Washington tends to treat their policyholders, at least insurance companies tend to treat their policyholders a little bit better. And it's because if an insurance company in Washington gets it wrong, or even if they get it right, but they treat the insured wrong in the process, they can be held responsible for payment of pretty significant damages, like tort-based damages. In Oregon, it's a little bit tougher. We still have claims against carriers who treat us the wrong way, and we look for things that establish, like what you said, is a standard of care. How an insurance company should be treating you, and when there's official bulletin saying you should do this, that sets what is a reasonable expectation for a policyholder and the base level of treatment that you should be getting from your insurance company. And if they don't do that, then insureds and their lawyers get to pound the table really hard and say, you're not treating us fairly, you need to treat us fairly, do it now or else.
And the or else is we will sue you, correct?
Most of the time, yes.
Right. Okay. I want to take a quick pause here to answer a question that's in the Q&A, and remind folks, if you do have a question on your little toolbar, Zoom toolbar there in the middle, it says Q&A, and you are welcome to use that. The question is, my original adjuster has not been available since I last attempted to contact her the third week in July. Apparently, I've been assigned other adjusters, but I've had very little communication since then. Last I understood, my claim was in the properties department. I have no idea what this means. I have not received copies of necessary paperwork despite numerous requests. There has been no payment in almost 6 months despite inventory and receipts being sent. I have no idea how to proceed from here. Well, that's pretty much of a classic question. I'm gonna say, I'm glad you're here with us. That is our goal for this afternoon, evening's webinar, is to try to answer your question. And Kyle, just from that, I mean, there's a couple of violations in there, a bunch of them, right? Failure to timely respond, et cetera. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. There's actually, it's like this is one of those types of things you see and like, oh my gosh, it's just like law school. It's just filled with so many problems in such a short amount of sentences. I was writing stuff down. So like Amy said, yeah, an insurance company is charged with an obligation to keep you informed affirmatively about the status of your case. And generally, you should expect something in writing from them every 30 days explaining what is the status of the investigation, what is being requested of you, and what are the next steps. They never say that. I mean, it's usually just a form letter that's spit out that says your claim is still under investigation. We usually fight those and say, no, tell me what, tell me why, and tell me how long. So that is problem number one with this, is that they're just leaving you hanging and disregarding their affirmative obligations to keep you informed. Number two, also like Amy said, is if you are reaching out to them with questions, they usually have it's 10 to 20 days, depending on the state, to get back to you with a response and tell you exactly, what they're waiting on from you, what they're sending to you that needs to be provided back by you. And the one thing that's troubling about your question, specifically in relation to everything that we just saw, is the timelines that are involved in your insurance policy.
Yep.
So from my perspective, which might be unique, but I don't think an insurance company can refuse to provide you with the things that you need to meet those deadlines and then rely upon those deadlines.
Right.
Right. So if they're breaching the contract, they can't then use that breach against you later.
Right. And so, yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say one last thing. So as far as what you can do, you can always talk to a lawyer. And if you're not ready to go to that step, you can file a complaint with the insurance commissioner. I'm not sure what state you're in, but you can reach out to them and say pretty much exactly like what you just said. You can go to their forms, they're on the website for each office, and submit a complaint complaining about how you're being treated by this carrier.
Yes, and on some of our prior workshops, webinars, we have had somebody from the Oregon department, we've had somebody from the Washington department. They cannot be your free lawyer. They will not, they will not kind of, back and forth for, 9 months, fight for you. But if they find violations, which it looks like there are, they will absolutely call the insurer out for that. More in Washington, I'm hearing, than Oregon, I guess Kyle would say. But again, the departments, that's their job, is to police, enforce the law of fair claim practices. And if, and the insurance companies have to respond when the state regulator gets in touch with them. So it's a freebie for you to boost your leverage if you file a complaint. We always tell people, file a complaint, keep your expectations modest about what they can do for you. If there's a factual dispute, very often they will just say, well, we're not a court, we can't decide who's right. But in a situation like this, where it's been 6 months and you haven't heard and you haven't gotten paid on parts of your claim that you've documented and provided receipts for, that sounds clearly like a violation. And so, we kind of recommend you do both, that you file that complaint. And, let me ask you a question, Kyle, about that. Like because look, realistically, you're not going to take every case that comes to you, right? You're a business and there's some claims that you just can't, it's not enough money in dispute, or you are busy, or you have, whatever. But if somebody comes to you and they have a problem and they haven't filed a complaint with their state agency, does that make you think that they don't have as strong a case because they haven't done that, or does it not matter?
I don't think it matters to me. I mean, I know there are others that are in my shoes and they always feel more comfortable when there has been a complaint.
Right.
I don't necessarily feel that way because I know personalities are different. People are generally afraid of their insurance company rocking the boat,
right,
going to the government, and I'm sympathetic to that. I mean, I really am. So no, I mean, I do understand, why you would. I understand why you wouldn't. I also understand being sometimes really upset based on, I think, what you can perceive as potentially a waste of time by going and complaining.
Right.
So it depends, like most things, on who you get as the person who's looking at your complaint, how the insurance company treats it, do they treat it serious or not? I mean, there's a whole host of factors that can go into it.
Yeah.
But what I do like about filing a complaint is, every insurance company must respond to the complaints when the regulators send it along to them. They have somebody in their compliance department that responds, and you get to know and you get to hear specifically from someone what is going on and why it's not going the way that you want.
Yeah. And I think, as I was saying earlier, UP, a lot of our, the thrust of what we do is to try to empower. That's our tagline, empowering the insured, meaning we want to fortify you with information about about your rights. And, of course, we don't want you to end up in a lawsuit. And, who wants that after you've gone through, losing your home and all that. But no, when there's money at stake and you need that money, I just, we are realistic with you that a state agency will definitely can help. But if the insurance company has dug their heels in, the legal system is definitely the only other place to go to get a remedy. I mean, there's certainly, people are using the internet to embarrass insurance companies, to call them out publicly, and that can help. I definitely encourage people not to be afraid to speak up, because the squeaky wheel gets paid, within reason. I mean, if you speak up in a way that that kind of puts you more in the annoying or crazy category, because you've said the same thing 50 times or whatever, which is understandable. That may not be helpful, but if you follow our guidance, and are that squeaky wheel that communicates in writing with your insurance company, uses short sentences, uses bullet points, says exactly what you expect from them and why, that's the best way to get yourself in a position to be that squeaky wheel. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, we will say, like, I can understand wanting to vent. It's so frustrating, rotating adjusters and getting the runaround, and who needs it after what you've been through? It's not right. But a lot of what our guidance is about is trying to help you make the best case that you can. So your insurance company sees you not as a pest, but as a person who is flexing their muscle, flexing their consumer muscle, and getting help in the right places, which includes your elected officials, your state insurance department, and a lawyer who knows what they're doing, not the real estate lawyer down the street who believe me, your insurance company, when they hire lawyers, they hire insurance specialists. And if you ever need to hire a lawyer, that's the same kind of lawyer you need, is somebody who really speaks insurance. It's kind of a specialty. It is definitely a specialty. We got another question I'm going to speak to briefly. I lost my second home in Talent, Oregon. My insurance company is paying me ALE. Do I owe taxes? I'm not a CPA. My short answer is no, though. But I would really love you to go on our website, put in the search box taxes, and take a look at, we have tips and we have webinars you can watch. But the bottom line is insurance proceeds are not taxable. Not like the benefits of, if you, Kyle, maybe you could speak to, like, if somebody files a lawsuit and they get a settlement, is that taxable?
Yeah, I mean, so I know the government always wants to take more money than we want, but the bounds of that are a lot of times insurance. Insurance is there to get you back to where you started in the event of a fire, and that's never going to be taxable. And I'm not a CPA either, and I get real hesitant to talk too much about this, but there are situations where, if you're suing for like bad faith damages or punitive damages or something that's not just straight breach of contract, I think that might be, or some portion of that could be taxable. And this is usually where I plug some of my favorite CPAs. I'll not do that right now, but go find
you
one.
can give us their names. We're always looking for CPAs that have worked on disaster claims, because they're really very unique. So, okay. So then also, this is a reminder that certainly in Oregon, the bulletin that the department put out reminds insurers not to terminate your loss of use, your temporary rent benefits until your property is habitable again. So for those of you who have partial losses, smoke damage, charring, and are fighting with your insurer adjuster over the cleaning that needs to happen, the repairs that need to happen, that's a piece of leverage for you, that the state has said that your insurer shall not force you to move back, cut off your temporary rent payments if the place is not ready to move back in. Now, there's a new law in Oregon that doesn't technically apply to 2020 folks because it didn't take effect until January, but we feel and I've heard the sponsor of the law say publicly, we see that as setting a standard of care that insurers should follow. And we would encourage you, when you communicate, when you write to your insurance company, to remind them that about these parts of the law. So 24 months of additional living expense is a given. And then if you have been reasonably diligent and looking for places or trying to work on rebuilding, you can get enough, and haven't been able to by 24 months, then you should be able to get another 12. The same thing for the, if there's a limit in your policy that on collecting full replacement costs, the new law says they should give you 2 years. So like I said, technically, you can't say that's the law, but you can say that is what the legislature has said is the law now, and that is how you should be handling my claim. We offer a sample letter requesting deadline extensions on our website that you are welcome to customize and use. We encourage you to get your proofs of loss in if you haven't already. And now we're just going to take a deep breath before we get to the underinsurance issue. Okay, so we touched on this a little earlier, remedies for unfair claim handling by an insurance company. If self-help hasn't gotten your claim on track, then, and if your state insurance oversight agency hasn't helped, then litigation is your next option. We talked about that lawyers will consider taking these on a contingent fee. Kyle, do you want to explain the what does that mean? One way, the claimant's attorney's fees one way. What does that mean?
Sure. Yeah, so the Oregon legislature has a statute here that provides a policy. I think it's one of the best attorney fee statutes that you can find. The only downside is you got to wait 6 months. But what it says is, if you recover a single dollar more than the insurance company's paid you in 6 months, then your lawyer and you are entitled to all of the attorney fees that you've incurred up to that point. You know, and it's really important because it encourages attorneys to take cases that are very, very important to you, but might not be financially worth it for the attorney, depending on what's going on. So like a dispute over like $1,000 might be make or break to somebody. If we're looking at possibly taking $300 out of that, you know, you're going to have a really hard time finding a lawyer that'll do that. But if that lawyer then gets to recover their attorney fees for whatever it took to go get that $1,000, it puts you back to where you should be. It compensates the lawyer for doing some good work. It helps everybody out, and the only person that loses is the insurance company, which is the way it should be.
Okay, and then in Washington, you have the Insurance Fair Claims Practices Act that has a penalty, right, for unfair claim handling. What is that?
Oh, well, Washington has, I mean, you've got, you know, really one big bullet in Oregon, which is attorney fees. You've got a bazooka gun in Washington. It's, you know, there's Consumer Protection Act, there's the Washington there's just a tort of bad faith. There's all of these things that really are there to punish the insurance company for treating you poorly. And under at least two of those schemes, you get to recover your attorney fees, not just if the insurance company breaches the terms of the contract and doesn't pay you enough, but also if you prove that they treated you poorly, just outside the terms of the contract, if they put your interest over theirs, and delay is a big one that we usually see, it gets you compensated and gets your attorney fees paid for too. So it's a really, really big hammer up there.
Yeah. Okay. And so, you know, now we're going to get to the if your insurance policy limits aren't high enough to pay, so it's one thing to go to a lawyer if your insurance company has withheld money that they owe you. But for a lot of people, their insurance companies pay every dime that looks like it's available in the policy, but it's not enough because the person is underinsured, because the insurance company failed to put enough, to recommend enough limits, or the agent or broker, did not tell you, there's no way you're going to be able to rebuild your house for this amount of money. You definitely need more insurance. And that is so common, very, very common. So that's actually more common these days than insurance companies not paying every dime that they owe. Those are the harder cases for lawyers to take. And I'm going to maybe, put Kyle in the hot seat a little bit about that. But before we do, just to be real, just to keep it real, that underinsurance, if you have an underinsurance claim, it can be very, very hard to win. Not that you're not in the right, you are in the right. I mean, this is one of those really frustrating topics for me because the law doesn't reflect reality, right? The reality is when you buy insurance, typically you go through an agent, they're getting a commission, right? So aren't they supposed to be the expert? Aren't they supposed to be using their expertise to help you customize that policy for you? But the way it really works in reality is insurance companies give their salespeople cost calculators, and they lull you into a false sense of security, right? They say, you call and you say, want to get insurance, and they ask you, 15 minutes of questions about square footage and all that. They put it into this calculator that the insurer gives them. It spits out a number, and 2/3 of the time, at least from what we find on wildfire losses, that number is too low. And that number has been too low long before COVID, long before climate change really started driving, up frequency of claims and pricing and all that. So insurance companies, a lot of people feel that they are intentionally underinsuring homes to limit how much they're going to have to pay out. We don't need to get into the politics of it. It's just a really big problem that we, of course, want to help you solve. So for a lot of people, a lot of lawyers like Kyle that work on contingency, they're not going to they cannot take a case that's too much of a long shot, because it does cost money, to prosecute, to file a lawsuit, to hire the experts and, do all the depositions and things. It's, so it is an investment for a law firm to take a case. And if it's an underinsurance case, it can be really hard to get a lawyer to take one, because the law still says in most areas, including both of your states, Oregon and Washington, that the insurance company, the agent, the broker only have a general duty to procure insurance for you. They don't, the fiction that I think the courts keep on handing down is that somehow you are responsible, which of course it doesn't make any sense. I mean, if people, if you walk into an insurance agent's office and say, okay, I want to insure my home, damn well, they're not going to say to you, okay, how much do you want? Because how do you know, right? Unless you're a builder, how do you know? Maybe you know what you paid for it. Maybe you know what you think could sell it for, but you don't know what it would cost to rebuild it if it were to burn to the ground. So it really is their job, but the courts keep protecting. And a lot of the friends of our organization have been trying every theory that we can to fix the situation. But until it gets fixed, it's still a hard road if you have no record of a conversation that you had with the agent or broker where you said, okay, I want to make sure I've really got enough insurance, and you have a record, which most people don't, of them saying, you're good. You definitely have enough and you don't need to adjust your limits upward. So that's why the next bullet point is, if your insurance policy limits aren't high enough to pay to replace your home or contents, you can consider joining a claim against a public utility. Now, that is not that's only an option if there is a utility that has been found responsible for starting the fire that took your home. Kyle, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, so I've actually been working with or in contact with the firm in California that's been going after Pacific Corp and some of those other utilities. But I think what Amy's getting at is, your insurance will insure you up to, say 70%. And you might have the ability, subject to some subrogation issues, but to go and get that extra 30% to get you whole from the company that actually started the fire in the first place. It can get whole lot more complicated than that, but insurance is there. If use it, and if you tap out and you can figure out who did start the fire and they've got some resources, that's another avenue to go to try to get you back to whole.
Okay, and so of the 2020 fires in Washington, Oregon, has there been a finding that the utility had some role in starting those fires?
I don't think there's been a finding yet. Okay. Has there? I mean, I
don't think so. I just know, I mean, in California, there have been, it's a big deal here. Our utility, the Northern California utility was found responsible for starting some huge fires, and they ended up declaring bankruptcy because of it. But like San Diego Gas and Electric, they paid out quite a bit of money to folks there. So that's sort of a question for you to ask a lawyer, is whether there's any evidence that a utility had some responsibility for the fire. So this is the bottom line on remedies if you're underinsured. If you have any kind of paper trail evidence that will help you, that will give you leverage to say that it's their fault that you're underinsured, that they gave you reason to believe that your coverage was adequate, that it was their mistake. And a lot of the lawsuits that have been brought on behalf of underinsured wildfire survivors, there's quite a few of them that have settled confidentially, and that makes it hard for all of us, for you and us, because there's no law. That the law isn't getting better, even though for some people who fight back, they're winning. But it's very hard because all to use that to help you, because these settlements are behind closed doors, and the insurance companies make people sign confidentiality agreements. So I guess I just want the message to be that if you are severely underinsured through no fault of your own, you didn't go and say, hey, I want to reduce my coverage to save money, and you really did think that you had enough insurance, there's no harm in running that scenario by a lawyer and somebody like Kyle, or one of these firms that have been fighting this battle. And we have on our website some samples of lawsuits that have been brought by underinsured wildfire survivers. So, and the remedy is, and sometimes you can, there's some people have been able to do it without filing a lawsuit. Usually they are lawyers themselves, or they get help from a lawyer writing letters and negotiating. And then in that case, so what you're asking for is a retroactive reformation of the contract, basically, to say, like, this insurance policy, which is a contract, should get rewritten to provide the amount of protection that it should have had in the first place. So that's that. I'm not going to go into a whole much more detail, because we've been talking a lot about legal stuff, and I think probably have covered that territory quite well. But we offer a lot of guidance on this self-help. So if you want to try everything before you go to a lawyer, which is fine and good, we have some 6 steps that we recommend. You check your policy for obvious errors. You calculate the cost to rebuild as was, so you can figure out what your home should have been insured for. And again, this is not the real estate value. This is what a builder would charge you to rebuild that house, or what a manufactured home company would charge you to sell you a replacement dwelling that's equivalent to the one that you had. All right. Step 3, review the history of how and when your dwelling limits were set. If possible, seek out and compare notes with other people in your situation who may have been insured through your same agent or insurance company. We've got on the line here Eva, who's on Team Up, and Eva is coordinating in both Washington and Oregon with folks that are helping with the recovery. And I know there are some groups, there's some Facebook groups. That's where you can go on and see if you can find other people that were underinsured with your same insurance company and chat and see if there's a pattern. Maybe it's the same agent that underinsured you, and that might help you. Step 5, make a clear written demand that the insurer honor their promises to put you back where you were before your loss. And then step 6 is consult with an experienced policyholder attorney. Very often, underinsured folks will make their request, and then the insurance company will give them a questionnaire to fill out. And it may look something like this, and they'll ask you a whole bunch of questions. I see Kyle smiling, because we kind of encourage people, if you get one of these, and you can get somebody like Kyle or somebody else that you'll find in our directory to help you, it's probably a pretty darn good idea to get somebody to help you answer those questions before you submit them, somebody who's a lawyer, because words really matter in this context. And it's all about trying to put the burden back on them, to say, like, I did everything right. I was honest with you. You had an opportunity to inspect. You knew about my home's features, and you got it wrong. But if you say the wrong things in these questionnaires, it'll sort of cut you off at the knees. So this is kind of what might help. The other thing you may have going in your favor if you're underinsured and you're looking for remedy is some language in the policy that arguably you could say puts the burden back on the insurer to revise the limits every year. Another theory some people have used is to say that the tools that insurers are using are flawed, are defective, and they know it, and they keep using these same tools over and over. And that's a theory that some lawyers have been using, and there's a link there to go on our website to take a look at that. An example. But I will say this, he said, she said, meaning like, I asked for full coverage, I don't remember when, and the agent said, I had it, I don't remember when that happened, almost never wins the day. It's just not enough evidence. Okay. Couple last things. If you have, we don't have any more questions, but if there are, feel free again to put them in the Q&A. But my colleague reminded me that your insurer will, if you let them know that you're underinsured and you are seeking a remedy, chances are not only are they going to give you that questionnaire, but they may ask you to submit to what's called an examination under oath, which basically means they get to grill you, and it's going to be recorded. Same thing, you can certainly do it on your own, but we highly recommend that you consult with a lawyer before you do it, because you want to take your best shot at convincing them that you're right, they're wrong, you're going to win. And it's helpful to kind of get some coaching before you do that, so you don't sort of admit, oh yeah, I knew I was underinsured, but I just figured, well, I needed to save some money. That's going to knock you right out pretty quick. So if you don't want to rebuild, you can elect to replace elsewhere, but because the law that really gives you that clear right only took effect this year, this is going to be a negotiation. Kyle, have you worked at all with wildfire impacted households that did not want to rebuild and wanted to try to cash out and max out?
Yeah, we've done it a couple of ways. Either just taking just trying for one lump sum payment and just moving on with your life, or two, trying to work out a situation where you can buy somewhere else. And universally speaking, the buying somewhere else option is very, very difficult. And it's been painful to deal with, but you're entitled to it. You should be entitled to it. And if that's what you want to do and use your money for it, you should be allowed to do it.
And again, it's really about, if you can, reach an agreement with your insurance company on the dollar amount it would cost if you did rebuild. And if you have code upgrade coverage, which we hope that you do, or extended benefits, that those should be included in that calculation. If you can, like Kyle was saying, if you can reach sort of an agreement and get them to, cut you or just say, okay, that's what we owe you, it makes it a lot easier to say, well, you're not going to lose any money if I use that money to buy it. You're going to pay the same amount. You insurance company, you're going to pay me the same amount, whether I go through the hassle of rebuilding or whether I just take that money and buy elsewhere. So it shouldn't really matter to you. And getting in the best strength position to be able to negotiate that, it's helpful to have reached an agreement on what, in theory, they would have owed you if you did replace. Issues, the tax consequences, we touched on that in the chat. Here, Val has given you a link to our one of our webinars on best practices related to taxes and wildfire claims. For those of you who are trying to negotiate to buy, your insurer may say, well, okay, but we don't owe you for the land. That's an argument you can educate yourself about on our website. These are our main arguments that we offer to you. They don't insure land. That should be irrelevant. You're not getting some windfall if you keep your old lot and you buy a house in a new location. That's the same cost of putting back the old house, because let's say the old house would have cost you $500,000 to put back, and you buy a house that's $500,000 that includes the land. You have an argument that the house you're buying is worth less because it's $500,000 including the land, while the old one was $500,000 plus the land. So it's an argument against what insurers will often say is, well, it's unjust enrichment if we let you take that money and buy without making a deduction for land. But that's our argument to help you overcome that. So lots of information on our website on that topic, and just a little bit of inspiration before we go. And then we got one more question. So let me get through the inspiration and then we'll hit that question. We are so rooting for every one of you. And just, here's fire families, it's very hard when you're where you are now to see a light at the end of the tunnel. But these are just some images of, here's a family breaking ground when they finally reached an agreement. And these were folks that had been through a year of our programming and also gave each other a lot of support, which is not always possible, but where it is, working with your neighbors, it's important. Fire families have celebrated with stud parties where people can write on the studs before the walls get closed in. I'm going to show you a slide for our upcoming programs. And our survivor to survivor forums are a great place where you can commune with people who are in your situation and get ideas informally. So we don't have outside professionals on those. It's all just very organic folks. Women's places in the bathtub. Well, okay. Then this is just people supporting each other, with inspiring words. So we encourage you to stay informed and sign up. But again, before we wrap up, I promised I would answer that last question. Code upgrade coverage. How do you figure out how much money that is going to be? So hopefully you have a bucket of coverage for building code upgrade. And that coverage is supposed to pay for additional costs on your rebuild that you have because the building codes in your area have changed since your home was built. And now you're required to do certain things so that you can be in compliance with the building codes and get a permit and get a certificate of occupancy. So typically, if you have code upgrade coverage, it's often a percentage of your dwelling limits, 10%, 15% or so. It might be a stated dollar limit. You may not have it. The best way to get your insurer to pay for, or to agree to pay and include the cost of code upgrades in the settlement, is to have a professional contractor break those costs out for you. So it's typically going to be electrical, plumbing, insulation. Those are some of the common ones where you're going to have to make improvements. And insurers will say, well, we insured what you had. And so that's why, and we don't pay for betterment or improvement. So if you have to make improvements, that's what code upgrade coverage is for. And again, the best way to reach an agreement with your insurer is to break those, get somebody local who's familiar with the building codes in your area to create a list. And we have a sample on our website of a code upgrade estimate, and get that to your adjuster and say, these are the code upgrades. They're broken out. And they were prepared by somebody who builds around here. That's kind of your best shot. And Val has put a link to that publication about code upgrades in the chat for you. So this is where presumably you're all on our mailing list since you're here. But if you have friends and neighbors and you think they could use our support and help, please encourage them to sign up so they'll get informed when we're doing an event. Our survivor to survivor forums, as I said, are a really lovely way to feel supported and know that you're not alone, and get asked questions. Here's the link to the Oregon department that has a consumer services to help you. That's the email, Nancy Yule of the contact there that you can get in touch with. In Washington, where according to Kyle, you may get a lot more love from the Department of Insurance. This is the toll-free number to call, and the website. I want to thank our Oregon and Washington funders. Remind you that the center, I'm sorry, I went a little too fast there. The center, I'm sure our translators wants to slap me. The Center for Disaster Philanthropy. Remind you that we have our curated libraries for you, Washington, Oregon. If you still have questions, you can contact us. The slide, while I look for the slide that's missing here that tells you what we've got coming up, which I will find in a minute. Eva, is there anything that we missed about local resources that you want to remind folks about, or Val?
So this is Valerie. Just if we're working with in Malden, Washington, we're working with that long-term recovery group. So if you are not plugged into them in their case management, please let us know. If you are in Oregon, I'm going to put in the chat Eva's email to just reach out to her, and because there's so many different fires there, I want to make sure we connect you to the resources in your local community.
So here is the information about our upcoming events. The next Survivor to Survivor Forum will be September 14th, and then we'll have another one on the 21st. On September 9th, we will be hosting a webinar talking about that hair pulling, annoying process that is depreciation, and how you can make sure that you are not getting ripped off on the way that the adjuster is depreciating your losses. So Kyle, I want to thank you so much for being with us today and ask you if there's anything you want to say in closing.
No, other than thank you all very much. I do appreciate it. And I will say this, don't be discouraged if you're underinsured. I talked to 5 people this week, and I think we're really doing what we can to try to help most of those people out, particularly when, the broker or agent or insurance company is the one that's calculating what your limits are. Reach out and ask for some help.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that positivity, because it's just not right. It's really, 95% of people are underinsured through no fault of their own. They reasonably believed the ads, you're in good hands. They reasonably believed, the agent or broker telling them, that I'm a professional and, all that. So, take a shot at it if you've got the energy. There's expert help, and we're here to try to point you in the direction of that help. So thank you to our translators. Thank you, Eva, Val, Elise, Javier, Kyle, and our partners with the long-term recovery groups in both Oregon and Washington. We're rooting for you. We have your back when insurance matters. And if you're having trouble sleeping, you can go on our website and you'll find things, way more information than you could ever digest. But it's there for you to use. And so with that, we're going to say good evening, stop the recording, and remind you that the recording will be available on our website after today. So if you missed something, or you're not sure you heard it right, or you have a neighbor that you think should watch it, it will be there for you free of charge, as are all of our services, thanks to our funders. So thanks again, Kyle.